Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the FM21 beta and episode 1 of Everything Wrong with Major League Soccer. Now, in this series, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to point out some of the problems that we're having with the FM21 beta, and we're going to actually look at some of the developers' responses, Sports Interactive. We're going to see if they're going to hopefully fix some of these nagging issues that we experience with FM20, and so the league will at least be somewhat exciting to play next year, and we're not going to be stuck in the same sand trap of terrible rosters and everything else that was wrong with last year's game. So this is going to be episode 1. I don't exactly know how many episodes there are going to be, but there's going to be a couple. And originally my thought for episode 1 was that I was going to go over my video that I did a couple of weeks ago about Major League Soccer and about what's wrong with it in FM20. But, I changed tact a little bit, and I decided to go with a different video for episode 1 because I have been going to the SI forums, and specifically the MLS forums, and there are a lot of people who are reporting things, and SI is responding to them and things like that. So I thought I'd get that out of the way first, just to sort of encourage everybody and say, maybe some of our issues are going to get resolved, even if they're not resolved yet. So we're going to jump into the forums now, and we're going to see what's being reported and what the responses are from SI. Okay, here we are in the SI forums, in the USA League specific forum, and if you managed in North America, you're probably very familiar with this forum because this is where it's at when it comes to managing an MLS. It's all about league specific issues. Now, this first post is by Sebastian, who will be our new best friend for the next couple of weeks because he is from the SI QA testing team. He's going to be the one responsible for taking in all of our suggestions, all of our problems, and then taking the best ones, or at least the ones that he can verify. He's going to be taking those to the development team, and hopefully they'll be fixing our issues. So this first post is just an introduction to the forum and how to actually post bugs and what to do. So hopefully, over the next 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe the next month, as they actually go into release, they'll continue to fix things. They'll continue to have a big patch ready, as they always do after the first month or two. So hopefully, a lot of our areas will get addressed. Now, the good news is that Sebastian has been on there. He has been pretty responsive to a lot of the posts, if not all of the posts. And some things he's already said are on the list for the developers, so hopefully this is a good sign of things to come, because in FM20 I've gotten some responses from people saying that SI wasn't real receptive to FM20, to fixing things for MLS, and I myself kind of slacked off in FM20, so I didn't really put in any bug reports or anything like that. So this is me taking responsibility, and we're going to look at all these bugs, and hopefully we can get some momentum towards fixing these bugs for FM21. Okay, that's going to do it. We're going to move on to the first post here. So I've removed the names from these posts just in case people didn't want their names that they use on the forums to get posted onto some video by some internet rando. So, I just want to protect people's anonymities there in the forums. But this first post is about the roster size. And a few people have mentioned this. A few people complained about this, where at the beginning of certain seasons, your roster limitation is set at 12. And people were confused about this, and I was confused about it at first as well, but what I managed to figure out is that this is actually part of the expansion draft. So the expansion draft, you can only protect 12 players, and that's what this is about. Now, it's a little bit more confusing than they did it in FM20 and prior, where they sort of took care of this registration kind of behind the scenes. But now in FM21, the expansion draft really takes over your registration, and they're like, this is your registration, and if you're not used to the expansion draft, it's going to confuse you like it did these posters and like it did for me for at least a little while as I tried to figure it out. But since I'm so familiar with it, I was able to figure it out on my own and realize it wasn't actually a bug, which is what the response was from Sebastian. He said, yes, this is intentional. This is how it is for the years that have expansion drafts, which are the first and second year. So 2021 and 2022, we have Austin and Charlotte coming into the league. So there's 2 expansion drafts. And so when you see this, don't panic. Just wait for the email that says we need to register our players for the expansion draft, and don't worry about the expansion, or don't worry about registration until then. Okay, next up we have a bug report from none other than yours truly, where I reported a weird little email that I got at the beginning of the second season. Basically, it's just an email talking about the various rule changes for the 2022 season. And what I noticed in this email is they had the lists of the different drafts and the different rule changes for each draft, but underneath each draft, they listed the rules for the super draft. Like, you know, waiver draft, they listed the rules for the waiver draft, and then they listed the rules for the super draft. And so basically they have the rules for the super draft in this email 3 or 4 times. And it could be confusing. You could just ignore it. I think most people just ignore it. But I decided to report it because it's a bug I noticed, and I figured nobody else in the world would ever see this and notice it and care, honestly. But I reported it anyway because that's my duty. Okay, the next post we have here, another non-bug bug report where a user states that there are no waiver drafts in the first off season, and they were kind of wondering, like, where they at? And here Sebastian replies saying that's by design. It's so that the super draft and the expansion draft will work properly. I guess there was just too much stuff to figure out with the contracts and the waivers and all that stuff. They couldn't make it work, so they went with simplicity, and that's a good sign because that's what I suggested to them. I said, if you can't make something realistic, make it simple, make it work. And that seems to be the philosophy they've done here. They've gone with the most important drafts, the expansion draft, the super draft. They said we can get those to work. Let's leave the waiver drafts out of it for that first season because that first season isn't that important, honestly. We're all waiting for the second season. So that's fine. We'll take that as an answer to that bug, non-bug. Okay, next up we have what appears to be a problem with Austin FC, the expansion team for the first season in MLS. And it looks like, to me, it looks like their finances are stuck at lower league level. Like they don't have proper MLS finances in that first season, so they're kind of unable to sign players. I don't know if that's just in the off season or if that's for the whole season. I haven't investigated this myself. I didn't take Austin FC yet, but it says the developers have logged this as a bug and they're working on it. So maybe I suggest for the beta, don't take Austin FC because all these expansion teams are funky in their first season, no matter what year of FM you play them, because they're coming up from lower leagues with drastically lower finances than any MLS team, and it's just sort of a nightmare to get those to work until your team has had a season or 2 in MLS. Okay, next up we have what appears to be our first game-breaking bug in the beta. This is again with another expansion team. This is Charlotte FC. They come in the second season of MLS, and it appears like they have a problem where at the beginning of the season they want you to choose a captain. The problem is that Charlotte FC doesn't actually have any players on their team at the beginning of the season. You know, Charlotte is a brand new team. They've got no players on their roster. I guess they have 2 players who are out on loan. So if you try to choose a captain, it says like basically you can't choose a captain, but then it also won't let you advance the game, and it seems like it crashes. So it seems like there are problems with Charlotte FC. The developers have taken notice. They're going to work on this. So both expansion teams seem to have problems. So I would kind of advise for the beta to stay away from the expansion teams. Hopefully they get those fixed. They better get those fixed because expansion teams are where it's at in MLS. Okay, next up we have what appears to be a scheduling problem with Montreal. And it looks like they play all of their games, or at least the vast majority of their games, in the first 2 months of the season. You know, the reporter here says they're playing games every 2 days. It's just the schedule is far too packed. And the response from Sebastian was that it looked like there might be a problem with the Canadian Championship schedule getting in the way and rearranging things. So this could be a problem with all of the Canadian teams in MLS. So we got to watch out for that. Take a look at some Canadian teams and see if they have this schedule problem as well. I checked out my team with Nashville, and I don't seem to have that problem. You know, my games are spaced out about 4 or 5 a month, so no problems with the American teams, at least not with Nashville. So maybe a little bit more in-depth research on this problem to see how widespread it is. But that's going to do it for episode 1, so until next time, see you later.